Hello and welcome to Supernatural Road Trip Season 3, where we look at all the towns and cities, real and imagined, that the boys visit in the course of a season. Talk about why they picked those, why there and not somewhere else, what's so special about this place. And so we're going to really get into the nitty gritty and some diners and hotels as well, I'm sure, along the way. So before we kick that off, let's have our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Carole.
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I've been a fan of Supernatural since season 3. I started writing fanfic in 2012, which is all on AO3 under Fire Sign 10.
And Marx.
Yeah, Marx Pyle. I'm a filmmaker, author, co-host of the podcast Genre Teamment, and been a fan of Supernatural since day one of the episode, and enjoying the ride. Well, till recently, although we got a prequel coming, so it's good.
Great, we do. Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and copy editor, and I've been a fan of Supernatural like Marx since the very beginning.
I'm Gail C. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male romance, but all the modern worlds are ones where Sam and Dean could walk in and feel right at home. I am late to the party, midway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months to catch up with season 12. And there we go, the story of my life. It kind of all took a turn there when a black Impala drove in. So let's talk about season 3. There was a lot going on, even though it was a little shorter than average due to the writer's strike. But what are some of the standout places for you that we encountered in season 3? And that can be for the first time or revisiting old favorites. Carole?
Well, I really liked, they actually had several episodes in New England, or at least the Eastern Seaboard. I particularly, being from Connecticut, in Connecticut myself, I particularly liked Red Sky at Morning, where they're at the Sea Pines in Sea Pines, Massachusetts, which would be really Brewster on Cape Cod. And also Malleus Maleficarum, which is in Sturbridge, which is about an hour and a half from me. Sturbridge is really noteworthy because it's one of the living museums where you can go into it and everybody is dressed and speaking and doing the things they would have done in the village. And you can just watch the village life and how people did everything. So while there isn't per se witches in the living museum, nonetheless, I think we all know that like Massachusetts and New England is fairly redolent with witchy history. And then, like as I said, with the Cape Cod one, Red Sky at Morning, just tying in with that whole shipping trade and the seacoast and everything, which is also extremely New England, extremely important to their history. And when you live in an area where pretty much an hour and a half will bring you to the coast, no matter where you are, it's a really prominent feature of that area. So I really enjoyed those 2 episodes being in quasi, to me, local locations.
Very cool. Marx?
Well, I second New England too, because it's a great place for all sorts of horror stories come from there in the genre. I think one location that I've been to a few times in real life that I've seen in other shows like Threshold and a few other shows have had it is New Harmony, Indiana for the finale. I don't know if any of you have been there or know anything about it, but it never is predicted quite the way it is, because I think if it did, it would be kind of cooler in a way, because it's such a small little town, but it's a touristy spot in a way. It's historically, it's the home of like 2 failed utopian societies. It's got a interesting history. They got this cathedral labyrinth area, a hedge maze. They got a roofless church, all these historical buildings and locations. I suspect the reason why it shows up so often on TV as I've seen it is because there's rope walk riders retreat that's there like once or twice a year. So there's a lot of riders travel there from around the country. And but I think it's just they always miss some of the little things because it's always really small and there's like golf carts being driven around by people and and stuff like that. And there's only like one 4-way stoplight there. So there's lots of little things that would be kind of funny things to throw in for a location, make it quirky. And of course, that was a really cool. I mean, we didn't get to see the place very much anyway, but it was a interesting showdown with pretty big bad in that finale.
I think it's kind of interesting too that they chose this, originally designed as a very spiritual new age, what we would now call new age community, and but it's replete with demons. Like this is where the demons decided it was so perfect. They had to, Lilith had to take vacation there.
How about you, Elektra?
Well, I'll give my shout out for, although we have moved since to Delaware, which has no state identity whatsoever. I'm still an upstate New York girl from the Finger Lakes. So I'll give a shout out to Buffalo, the armpit of the world, where we first run into John's little hideaway storage area there and discovered just how much fun stuff he has hidden away there. And why on earth anyone would hide anything in Buffalo other than no one goes there. Because, part of the year it's just buried in snow. A
lot of the year.
Yeah, there at times when other people just don't have snow, there's 6 feet in Buffalo. And up there, no one notices it. It's an entertaining town. It's a college town. It's a fun place to go. And I guess I'm going to have to go visit Sturbridge because I always thought of it as just, a rest area on the Mass Pike on my way to visit Boston. I've been to that Sturbridge rest area, I don't know how many times.
It's actually like around here, and it's one of the big field trips you go on, like in junior high, where you're haven't graduated to overnight field trips to say Boston. But the 1-day field trips where you bus in and you spend the day, watching everybody take care of goats and cook and make things. I mean, it's really cool. It is really cool. They do a really good job. Probably the most. It's
remarkable. I missed this, given that I moved to the Boston area as an adult and I was a medieval recreationist and I somehow missed that.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Also, a shout out to the fact that we have an episode called Sin City that isn't in Vegas.
Yes.
That's just weird.
Yes. Well, I discovered early on that I could get my parents to go on educational road trips, even if I couldn't always pry them loose on vacation. So cue the living history museums all across the East Coast. So Sturbridge was a favorite. I love that place. Mystic Seaport, which is not one of our third season locations, but really should have been.
They could have done Red Sky at Morning there. That would have been perfect. You could have had the shipyard. Oh my God, Mystic is so great.
They probably got the Quayside at Vancouver for free, but
you're not wrong.
Sort of. So yeah, I love Mystic. And Anna, give you a chance to catch your thoughts before we come back and do your introduction, but we are talking about some of our favorite locations in season 3. So we'll give you a chance to get that, and we're glad that you were able to join. Technology, gotta love it. I had to laugh that Erie, Pennsylvania was on the list for time is on my side. I grew up 45 minutes south of Erie, right in the lake effect snow belt. So real familiar with Erie and Buffalo snow. And, I say this with a heart filled of love, but Erie is exactly the kind of place I can imagine a zombified rogue doctor existing. That's kind of Erie in a nutshell.
It's eerie. You should say that.
It is.
It is that kind of place, isn't it?
Everybody wants to spell it with 2 E's like that, but that's not how the real place is spelled. I love that. I also loved Broward County, Florida with Mystery Spot because I grew up going on, I did get my parents to go to vacation in Florida, even back before it was Disney-fied. And that was when you could find those little mystery spot places that were exactly like that, only without the trickster. And so that was just, that would have been my jam. I would have been hauling my parents into that place. I did haul them into a number of them just like that. So Anna, tell us who you are and then let us know what some of your favorite locations are.
I'm Anna Kensing, and sorry that I'm late. And I write queer romance, mostly and have dabbled in supernatural fanfic for a while. I started watching at the very, very beginning of Supernatural. And in season 3, I think my favorite places, I think my favorite place in season 3 is Cicero, Indiana, where we get the first appearance of Lisa Braden and her son Ben, and who turns out not to be Dean's son, but could have been. And I mean, she says he's not, but anyway. So, which then shows up, multiple times later in season 5, and then, Dean goes back to her after everything happens in season 5. So I think that Cicero, Indiana, is probably my favorite location in season 3 in Supernatural.
Okay. What else struck anybody about any of the locations? We've got Chicago in the Magnificent Seven. This is not the first time the boys have actually made it to Chicago. They get there a couple of times, which is notable because they don't usually get to real big cities. Everything is an it's really Vancouver, but let's call it somewhere else. And this may have been true with this version of Chicago as well, but we know that in Bloodlines, they actually did go to Chicago. And of course, we're going to Sioux Falls several times. What else stood out to anybody? Elektra?
Well, they end up in Seattle for a while, which is always at least briefly. And then in goodness, Ypsilanti, Michigan. But a very Supernatural Christmas is always one of my favorite episodes on rewatch. Just the whole thing with the Christmas wreaths. That is so much fun to watch them, the gears work in their minds as they figure it out. Wait, there's something weird. These people are just too nice.
I love them. The Kerrigans.
And there's so much cool background stuff there about, why Dean doesn't like to celebrate Christmas.
But Valentine's Day.
I mean, there's a lot of travel here, but there's so much. It's a short season, but it's a very focused season because they're always aiming at trying to get Dean out of where he ends up at the end.
We lost you, Anna.
Sorry. Yes, I'm back. My iPods were going off on a different thing. So yes, I do love the very Supernatural Christmas and being in Michigan. And the motel that they stay in is the Kincaid's. They stay in the Kincaid suite in that motel. And then there's a painting in that motel that's reminiscent of Thomas Kincaid, which apparently was an homage to Jared Padalecki in a Christmas movie where he played Thomas Kincaid. So I think that's delightful.
That's cool.
I've seen that movie.
It went direct to DVD. That's possibly why.
I have
seen that.
It's still out there though. You can still watch it. It's out there.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful fan remake of a Thomas Kincaid painting with the Nazgul, riding off of it. And there's somebody who goes around and buys paintings at knockoff paintings at yard sales and then fandomizes them and puts in at and Star Wars things. But the one with the Nazgul and the Thomas Kincaid painting riding away from the snow-covered glowing house is just kind of perfect.
Nice.
The thing that made me, since we're talking about a very Supernatural Christmas, I always think of Michigan with Frankenmuth and the big Christmas shops and market there, and they do up Christmas in a big way. And I wondered if at least the Michigan piece of this wasn't a bit of a tip of the hat to that whole Christmas market kind of thing that some of the area is known for. Because I don't know why else they'd have put it in Ypsilanti. Anybody have an inside track on Ypsilanti here? What makes it, particularly
I can
attractive?
barely pronounce it. I'll give you that.
All I found on it was about, it had a big automotive manufacturing history, which in no way to me seemed to link to.
Yeah.
Well,
Other than it's in Michigan, and that's where, Detroit, Michigan, and that's cars.
Right.
Much
The
of Detroit,
automotive
much of
industry is
Michigan.
largely dead, so it could be, coming back from the dead zombie,
I think that
Zombie
actually,
What, Bunny?
I spent some time growing up in Detroit actually, and there's actually quite a lot in Michigan that has small towns that Supernatural could be set in. I think that there's been a few other Michigan towns, either real or fictional, that Supernatural has been set in, and it's a totally Supernatural-esque state. So I'm not at all surprised that they picked Ypsilanti as a place that they could set an episode in.
Well, a lot of these places have a long history with some things that show up along the way. So the writers have a good track record for mining some of that. Marx, anything else standing out to you?
I almost wonder if they thought about, there's a Santa Claus, Indiana, actually, that's only a couple hours away from New Harmony. It's got a Holiday World, Santa's Village and stuff too. And I wonder if they were thinking that, and they're like, no, we got a lot in Indiana this season. Let's just switch it up. Yeah, Sioux Falls is kind of their home base this season, right? Versus the Roadhouse that's gone. And what else? I guess the one location that Elektra mentioned actually was that really stands out as a location and was fake, probably for good reason, for slander reasons, was in Sin City, was at Elizabethville, Ohio. So it definitely stood out as a location, and seeing how sin ran rampant in the city with just a little nudges here and there by some demons. So it's definitely a memorable episode, and also gave us, some insight on, how much has Sam changed and stuff. Is it really Sam still? Because he very cold-heartedly killed some demons. And first time we saw Dean kind of start to almost like a monster or a demon a little bit, at least get to know him a little bit. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in that episode.
Yeah, if that had happened in Las Vegas, no one would have noticed.
No.
That's true.
There's just so much going on there.
Yeah, they make this small town that seems like it'd be a really nice, normal, small American town, but then it just goes crazy.
I think it is the only
over.
And it is the only fictional location in the whole season, I think, right? All the other locations are actual real time.
I think so, yeah.
I noticed that too. The rest of them are all real.
I mean, it's a short season, right? Because this was the year that the writers' strike happened. And so, the last episode was 16? And so maybe there would have been more fictional towns, but yeah, it is, I think it's unusual in that there's only one fictional town in this particular season, and everything else, while there's not as many, like Gail said, Chicago's the only big city that happens in season 3. All of the rest of the places in season 3 are established places.
I love that the Super Wiki, you said that only one is fictional, but when you scroll down the Super Wiki places, at the end, in No Rest for the Wicked, you have Sioux Falls, New Harmony, Hell. And Hell does not have a tag next to it saying that it's fictional. So
that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Well, it's that you can debate that for a long time, and depending on people's belief systems,
As
That's
to whether
right.
it's real or not.
Nobody's going to be
they
like
may argue with you
Elizabethville
about.
in Ohio is real.
Nobody's going to say that.
Well,
This is true.
I couldn't figure out where Ghost Facers took place other than this fictional mansion. Did they locate that anywhere?
Appleton?
Webster Springs, West Virginia.
Ghost Face, Appleton, Wisconsin,
Yeah.
Okay.
which
I didn't rewatch it. I remember it really well.
the only thing I know Appleton, Wisconsin is for is it's a very Lutheran area. I used to have like insurance for some Lutheran organization, and everything was always Appleton. And I thought, Appleton, what a wholesome sounding name. Can it get more wholesome than Appleton?
Oh, so yeah, so yes, it does. I think you're right. It happens, like it takes place in Appleton, but apparently the Morton house, where it was the haunted house that it's purportedly set in, it does exist in Webster Springs, West Virginia. So I think they just
Oh,
sort of
really?
took a place.
Oh,
They took a
wow.
place and then they just transposed it into Wisconsin.
Huh.
So, which they do
Gotcha.
that. They've done that before.
Yeah,
They take
yeah,
like a place
yeah.
and put it in a new town. So
I mean,
yeah.
I even noticed that with the whole Elizabethville thing for Sin City, there's Elizabeth, Ohio, and there's Elizabethtown, Ohio, but there's no Elizabethville, Ohio. So I like to, get it right in between the lines there.
They're just trying to fool us.
While in Dream a Little Dream of Me, it's based in Pittsburgh for part of it. And we lived in Pittsburgh for 10 years. I've written several series of books that are set in Pittsburgh to some extent. The city's got enough history to have a lot of ghost stories and hauntings and dubious paranormal sightings. So I loved that it was set in Pittsburgh, but we really didn't get to see a whole lot of Pittsburgh other than the motel room where the boys do the dream route and go stomping around in Bobby's head. So I would have loved to have seen them come back to Pittsburgh. It has great shots with like all they've torn down a lot of the dead steel mills, but some still exist. And those are just so hulking and monolithic and dark that they make a great place for something nefarious and supernatural to happen. And it would have been fun to see some of that, but not so sure that Vancouver has a lot of those. So probably
they're really distinctive looking. They're really hard to fake.
Yeah, they are.
Pittsburgh has a very distinctive look.
Mm-hmm.
It's why they avoid cities mostly, because they're really hard to fake.
Yeah,
especially if you have iconic buildings. And so many cities do, but with Pittsburgh, it's that PPG Plaza that locals call the Darth Vader Castle.
Well, that and the convention center downtown has that really iconic look to it. It's Pittsburgh is very hard to miss if you're downtown.
Yeah, I think that that's right. And so like in Bad Day at Black Rock, like they go to Queens. They're first in Buffalo, and fine, you can set this in Buffalo and be filming it in Vancouver and find Vancouver places that look a little bit like Buffalo. That's no problem. But Bella Talbot's apartment is purportedly in Queens, and yeah, you can find a swanky apartment in Queens and film it in Vancouver and no problem, but you would have a harder time doing that in Manhattan.
That's also
or even
a
Brooklyn.
not insignificant drive.
Yes.
That's
Queens,
7 hours worth of driving to get down to Long Island.
Yes, it is.
Having lived in upstate New York, a good 2.5 hours south of Buffalo, and had my parents out on Long Island, I can tell you that's not a short drive, and there's no way to make it shorter, short of taking a helicopter.
No.
True.
I mean, I live in Brooklyn and I fly to Buffalo, so yes.
And driving I-90 in any kind of bad weather, not a good idea. Especially not on that Buffalo side where it's often closed. So, bad weather will do that for you. Marx, you've been quiet, so I'm going to come poke you
Oh,
and pick on
what's
you.
going on? What's the question? What?
The question is, any other city that caught your eye to make you wonder, why did they do it there?
Let me look here. Let's see. I mean, the only other major location that really stood out to me a lot, which I think you mentioned a little bit, was the mystery spot, because did not go to a lot of mystery spots as a kid, but we went cross country a few years back, and we went to this really cool place, Cosmos Mystery Area in Rapid City, South Dakota. And I still fondly remember that location and the mystery spot there. I feel like they could have played up a little bit more of the mystery spot stuff, besides just the Groundhog's Day element, which was still a lot of fun. But I think that reminded me of good memories. and I love that in those spots are over the place. And if you're a fan of Gravity Falls, that's another awesome mystery spot too. So that's another location. And in Florida, of course, I know, Florida has all sorts of touristy traps everywhere. So I can see why they picked that. But I went to South Dakota for mine.
Well, and I love that in one of the other episodes, Cass gets, I think it's when Tony Bevel dispels him from the bunker at the beginning of season 12, Cass gets thrown far enough that he comes flying through a billboard and lands in the middle of the field, and it pulls out, and the billboard is for a mystery spot. So I love that the show, cared enough to cycle back and throw in that little homage too, because he flies right through the spiral on the mystery spot and lands in the field. So good.
That's right. Yeah.
Good job. What's special about Milan, Ohio for the long distance call episode? I was surprised when I did a rewatch that episode stood up better than I expected, because it was one of the ones that isn't a big plot point. There isn't anything really major that happens in it. But when I watched it again, it was a nice, solid Monster of the Week episode with the Crocata and the telephone company building. Why Milan, Ohio? Anybody have any theories about that?
Well, Google says it's Edison's birthplace. And that's why they actually have that museum that the boys go through, which is great for the museum docent. And she's like, and we're walking, and we're walking.
And we're walking.
Love that.
We're walking.
But yeah, it's Edison's birthplace. So they have, and they do apparently have, big museum. And so I like how they tied that in then to the whole Crocata phone calls from the dead thing, because Edison was like a pretty big spiritualist. I mean, a lot of people were in that era, and they were always trying to like capture, what are the vibrations from beyond saying and stuff like that. So that was a great little tie-in for a fictional story, but giving it some legs in reality, almost like they did a little bit with the H.H. Holmes story, where they spun it into something beyond, but it had a basis in reality, real reality, not supernatural reality.
Right.
And it's always nice when they do that, because they'll pick out little interesting bits of something somewhere. Like, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know that maybe Edison was into trying to record spirits and things like that. And so you would watch it and think, oh, really? But you really did. And so it's a nice little homage in there.
Yeah, they're all about Edison there. They got all their schools are Edison schools, and her high school teams are called the Edison Chargers.
There you go.
I love the hotel. Of all of the, I think season 3 in terms of its hotel decor was like one of the best. And this particular, the long distance call episode in Milan, Ohio, I think is one of my favorite hotels. It's got it's totally retro. It's and it's not like stylized retro. It looks to be like actually retro. Like it hasn't been renovated since 1966-ish. It's got the avocado appliances. It's got a really short refrigerator. It's got the starburst room divider. Formica table. There's like faded, wallpaper. It's, I think, really like, and the cabinets in the little kitchenette are totally dingy and kind of a oatmeal color. And I think really this one is one of my favorite of the motels that they've put together.
All the motels were so great and, just so inventive and often tied into the theme of what the episode was about. So yes, absolutely. Even in Mystery Spot, it was such a Florida kind of hotel with the pastel colors and the breeze block, concrete brick cutout divider things down by the parking lot, and just all those touches that looked very authentic.
Mm-hmm.
What about Maple Springs, New York, where Bedtime Stories was set? Do we have something special did they just pull that out of a hat, or is there a reason here? Carole,
Yeah.
I'm looking at you because you know these things.
I really like it because, once again, Maple Springs just has a very wholesome sound to it. Like you're thinking maple syrup and pancakes and things. But when I went to look it up, I mean, I was really shocked at how, except for Elizabethville, all of these really were real places. And so is Maple Springs. Now, they may take liberties with what that place actually is versus what it is in real life. But Maple Springs is so small that it is termed a hamlet. A hamlet.
Oh.
Well, doesn't a hamlet sound like the cutest place to live ever? Who doesn't want to live in a little hamlet? It has like a couple hundred of people in it. Now, obviously, I think here it had more, but it was still this very picturesque little town, with cute little houses and everything, and the gardens and the trees and everything just looked so nice, which was really befitting the whole fairy tale aspect of that episode, where we had the girl bringing forth all these fairy tales and she herself being in, the black hair and the white dress with the red ribbon. So it just had that really picturesque feel. And I thought they just, did a really good job playing that up. Maple Springs. Now I want pancakes.
Now, Elektra, you're the New Yorker. Any input on Albany, which shows up in Fresh Blood?
Albany is, capital of New York. But it's a very small city, and other than the small downtown area, as soon as you get out of the 3 or 4 square blocks of downtown, it's very generic looking. I've walked around Albany quite a bit, and you can get away with making it look very, Vancouver can pass for Albany pretty easily.
Yeah.
Other than the downtown plaza where the state buildings are.
Yeah.
Once you get away from there, from the plaza there, everything is pretty much generic. I do a convention up there, and it's in a standard motel. It's just outside the downtown area.
Yeah, it might be at the same hotel. I've been to Albany. I've been to Albany probably definitely once for when my wife took the bar exam, which is one of the places where a bar exam sits in Albany. And so we stayed at a Holiday Inn Express just outside the downtown area. And it's just
I'm
very
pretty sure I know that
anonymous.
Holiday Inn Express. I've been going to conventions there since the late 80s, on and on.
Yeah. It's got like an interior courtyard, and there's like a tree.
Oh yeah, I know
up
that one.
You know
that was
one,
where
right?
last time tree was.
Because I don't know that there are that many hotels that could actually host
No,
a
but the one
convention
with
in
the
Albany.
interior courtyard,
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
There aren't
Stayed
a
in that
lot of
hotel.
those.
Yeah.
Now, how about Monument, Colorado, which Juice and Bellow, and we also had Lincoln, Nebraska. Anybody with some insight or firsthand
Well, the
experience. with
monument's
the-
near Colorado Springs,
Mhm.
which is where Heinlein lived before he discovered his wife couldn't handle altitude sickness. There's all sorts of interesting stuff in and around Colorado Springs. You know, Air Force Academy is there. Broadmoor Arena's there. It's a really cool place. So they picked a town near a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah,
And
It-
and
it's
Lincoln,
fairly
Nebraska,
small, 11,000 people or so. It's not a very big town.
And Lincoln, Nebraska is it's a callback to season 1 when Meg called John to come and meet her in one of the last episodes in Devil's Trap. So I think that was deliberate because that's the first episode, right? The first episode is set in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I think that was very possibly a deliberate callback to, season 1 when it was a trap, and Meg called John and was like, come and meet me in this abandoned warehouse in Lincoln, Nebraska. And Sam and Dean are like, no, it's a trap. And John's like, of course it's a trap. I'm going to go anyway so that you boys can, go after the demon with the cult, blah, blah, blah. So I think that was a deliberate callback there.
Good catch. Good catch. And then, Carol, I know you mentioned the couple of ones in New England, Sea Pines and Canaan, Vermont. But anything that we haven't already said about those? Because Sturbridge is kind of obvious, but I don't know much about Sea Pines or Canaan.
I don't know a lot about Canaan per se. Actually, there's a Canaan, Connecticut that's very, very affluent. And certainly Bella's apartment, but they did put it in Vermont. But I think it was just the sense of quiet affluence, that Bella had this really, ritzy apartment full of expensive items because she did so well with her black market, black magic trade. New England, I think Mark said this too earlier, that New England is just redolent with spooky stuff. And, we look at playthings. I mean, that's just quintessential New England. And also, so I think that's what they did a really good job of with the red sky in the morning. Like, you don't expect some of these little Midwestern towns necessarily to have a history of something spooky, but boy, you do in New England. Bed and breakfasts love that kind of thing. And there's so much, I guess, being one of the older, more settled areas, of course, of the country, and the summer season is really short here. So you have a lot of winter and a lot of fall and a lot of darkness and a lot of, things that are just so atmospheric if you're going to do something like this, where it just seems it's almost spookier in a way to do it out in some place like Colorado with the wide open spaces and the mountains and everything. But it's almost a little more surprising because you're like, oh, what could be evil in the middle of all the sunshine and the mountains, and oh, look, there's evil. So in some places they want to play up the atmosphere that's already there, and then in other places they're playing the shock value of you don't expect it there. I mean, Broward County, again, you don't expect in these ticky-tacky touristy places that something could really be going on. Now, I haven't been to the Florida places, but I've been up and down, the New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia seaboard and boardwalks. And, they all have all of these, the hokey stuff. And I've traveled as a child. I traveled extensively through the West. And when my parents were traveling with 3, medium to small children, you take those stops. You stop where the dinosaurs are, and you stop in all these places because your kids are going to, spontaneously combust in the car. But you stop in all of these great little touristy places, and Sam and Dean are always talking about, the biggest ball of twine, or, the biggest stack of junk cars. I forget where that one was. So they really like to take advantage of those things, and it really works well for both the humor and then the unexpected. Who would expect something evil living there?
In my head,
Let's not
go ahead.
let's not forget that it's in Sea Pines, Massachusetts, that they're working that case with Bella, and it's Gert and her museum gala that the boys have to go to, and they have to put on a tuxedo, and that we have Dean descending a staircase in his tuxedo, and Bella looking at him like, and then suggesting that they have hate sex later. So
Don't objectify me.
don't objectify.
And then he smirks as he walks away.
I think we have to remember that Stephen King has spent a career teaching us that New England is spooky and dangerous. And
Not New England, just Maine.
Just Maine. Okay.
Not all of New England, just
Maine-
that one
Maine.
part of Maine.
Maine has its own, I think, spooky charm because there's so much isolation. Maine is huge, not as huge as Texas, but it's pretty huge. I mean, every other state in New England, you literally can drive across in about an hour and a half. Maine's really big, and it's full of forests, and you talk about your snow. I mean, if you're living anywhere north of, Bangor, you have to expect that you're on your own for the winter.
Well, you drive up to the capital, and then you can drive another like 6 hours north.
Yes.
And that's
Exactly.
all like wild country. There's like back of beyond me.
Exactly. So the sense of isolation there is something that can be get spooky really, really fast.
Yeah.
So he
The other
definitely
thing,
he's a
it's
master of
great
that.
for writers. It's a relatively inexpensive place to live if you can deal with the cold.
Yeah. I have
Well,
a house in Maine, so yeah.
You get into any of the states that have large expanses of forest with not many people in them. And it doesn't take a huge imagination to think there could be a lot of things living in those forests that people wouldn't run into very often. The upper third of Pennsylvania, when you go across I-80, is largely timberlands and owned by coal companies. And there are long stretches where you don't see a break in the trees for towns or power lines or anything. And it was even crazier when the interstate was first launched, there weren't even rest stops. So,
but of course we needed them because there was no one there.
But you get into upstate New York, you get into New England, there's a whole lot of forest and not a whole lot of people, and all kinds of things could be living in there.
Come on, we used to have to drive 45 minutes to get to an interstate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the first time I ever traveled to upstate New York was for like a filming gig thing. And I got in late. It was super dark. It was all woods. I was like, where am I going? And then I was like, I think I get gas. I'm almost out. But the gas stations were all closed. They all closed down early for what I'm used to at least. And then there's no cell phone reception. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is a horror movie.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, and I also wonder if some of the towns in like Colorado and all that weren't picked because you've got the Rockies in Vermont, you've got the Rockies in, the far western state. One pointy mountain kind of looks like another. So just the other side of it or a little lower. So it definitely passes. Well, folks, we are coming up to the end of our time. Is there anything here that we didn't touch on that you've just been dying to mention? Baton Rouge, Louisiana, anybody?
Baton Rouge.
I think go ahead, Marx.
I don't know if they actually went there, did they, or they just
mention it. That would be a road trip.
Oh,
That would be a road trip. Yeah, no, my only thing is, the finale, which has one of my all-time favorite lines in it about, how you're my weak spot and I'm yours. And so that I think takes place in Sioux Falls. And so we're back again to Sioux Falls, the home base for this particular season. And yeah.
Well, and everybody says that, it's just a shame Sam and Dean never got to New Orleans, which would be pretty hard to fake in Vancouver. But that's where they're shooting the prequel for the Winchesters. So we may get our Winchesters in New Orleans after all.
Actually, in the first episode, in the pilot, they actually refer to the fact that Dean has come to Palo Alto from New Orleans. He had just wrapped up a case in New Orleans and come out. So they refer to it at least. I think, yeah, too atmospheric and distinct to, but there's some great, and there have been some really great fanfic stories that then have been set in New Orleans because there's just so much wonderful atmosphere and history to draw on.
I know I read a good
It's
one.
impossible to fake.
Yeah, I read a good fanfic about Dean's case in New Orleans and its aftermath, and there are many like that. Yeah, Vancouver apparently has a tremendous stock of Victorian and craftsman and kind of the homes like that with the wonderful woodwork and the stained glass and that whole look. But it's hard to fake New Orleans.
Yeah, I used to live up there for a little while for film school and stuff, and they have very distinct communities, distinct neighborhoods. So Gastown's a great one to try to use some old buildings. Yeah. They got their own Chinatown and all sorts of locations. Go below north, you got mountains. So,
well, folks, we have once again blown through our time like we always do. So before we wrap up, let's let everybody go around and say where we can find you online, starting with Marx.
Hey, you can find me at marxpyle.com. You can also find me on Twitter at Mr. Marx. And if you want to just check out the podcast, it's at genretainment.com.
All right, Anna?
You can find me at annakensing.com and on TikTok, where I spend an extraordinary amount of time at Anna Kensing Books.
Elektra?
You can find everything you want to know about me at untilmidnight.com.
Carole?
I'm here on Facebook with, well, not here because we're not on Facebook now. I'm on Facebook as Carole M. Stokes. You'll see me a lot in the TFWNC Facebook group that Gail runs, and also on lots of continual panels. On Twitter, I'm true_firesign10, and all of my fanfic is on AO3 under firesign10. Mind the tags.
I'm pretty easy to find at gailcmartin.com, morganbryce.com. All the social media, some variation of those names, and I'm very active on Facebook, also on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group. I'm a staff writer for the Winchester Family Business, but most of the time I'm here on Continual. So thank you to all of my wonderful panelists for being here, and thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more Supernatural coming up on Continual, so we'll see you online.